Investors, welcome back to Green Money Momentum, where we talk about market movements, making money, and money momentum. I'm your host, Trevor, and we are here for Wednesday's daily talk of stock. And I hope that all of you had a wonderful Wednesday. For any nervous investors, you could finally wipe that sweat off your brow because Jerome Powell came out and gave the markets exactly what we were expecting, which is a rate cut. So we did see the big FOMC meeting today, followed by Jerome Powell's remarks, and we did get the highly anticipated rate cut. So very exciting to see that. Moments after, we did see some remarks from Jerome Powell, and initially both of the major indexes did have a sell-off with some stocks, but we have seen a nice recovery through the day. And the reason why we initially got this sell-off is because, just as this article reads right here, Powell downplayed a December cut. So the next big FOMC meeting is going to be in December. So in 41 days, right now there is a 70% projection that the Fed does ease and cut rates once again. But at this meeting today, I did watch it live, Jerome Powell wasn't really giving any clear indication on what the Federal Reserve will do next. And so with that, the markets did have that little bit of a sell-off initially, but again, a rebound right back to the top. So the markets are digesting what we saw today, and overall it was a positive that we did see the Federal Reserve cut rates. And despite Jerome Powell not really giving a clear indication on what the Federal Reserve will do in December, I do believe that they will cut once again, but we will have to see as we get closer to that decision. What I do like, however, is that decision is going to be in December, meaning that we have the rest of October and all of November and even most of December before we get that back on the plate, because typically the federal funds rate and the FOMC, the Fed, every time they have a meeting, this is when the markets tend to get a bit more volatile. So right now we are seeing that there is a rate cut incoming. The markets should be stimulated from this. And then we also have China and the United States having their trade talks very soon. And things right now do appear to be going positive with both of those countries. So right now, I am very bullish on the markets. We are coming from levels of extreme fear recently, now in fear getting closer to neutrality, greed, and then soon to be in extreme greed. I do expect for October to finish bullish, and I do expect for November to finish bullish, especially whenever we get the news around China and the United States, as long as there is positives from their trade talks. And so right now I'm very excited on what we are seeing with the markets. We also got some rocket fuel from some companies who reported earnings today. So we saw Microsoft report earnings. They came in at a positive. Meta reported earnings, also had a positive revenue, earnings per share. We saw both of the alphabets come in very positive. Their revenue up 8% year over year, $102 billion for Google. So an explosion in some of these tech and AI companies working as a positive catalyst for the markets. So right now things are looking very positive. Both of the major indexes are at all-time highs, and despite having that bit of a sell-off for just a short amount of time, the markets are looking very strong and looking like they want to go a lot higher. And so with that, we are going to talk about a whole bunch of different plays that I expect to go a lot higher with the markets. These are risk assets that have a lot of potential and should see a lot of benefits from these rate cuts that we are seeing. The one for this month, last month, and then in December, I do expect for the Federal Reserve to cut, because we are going into a much larger cycle of quantitative easing. Despite Jerome Powell not necessarily wanting to admit it, we must remember that the Fed chairman and the Federal Reserve is constantly under the microscope from the public and from investors. So they got to be really careful with what they say. And if Jerome Powell came out as dovish today, and then if any data changed that could spook the markets more than just going and being not necessarily clear about what the Federal Reserve will do for December. So the first play that we're going to talk about here is BitMine Immersion Technologies. This company has the largest Ethereum holdings in the world, and with BMNR, the reason why I am covering this is because with the interest rates coming, this is going to be stimulative for all cryptocurrencies, and right now crypto is looking like it is going to have a big bounce up. So when we look at Ethereum, it has been held down for a long period of time. Currently we are at 45 on the relative strength index, and then we are seeing a bullish cross on the MACD. That is not just on Ethereum, but also on Bitcoin, which is the leader for the crypto market. So we are seeing on Bitcoin a bullish reversal on the MACD, and we are right at the level of support on the rising levels of resistance and support for Bitcoin. So I do expect for Bitcoin to explode Q4 of this year and all cryptocurrencies to follow that. And with BMNR, they again hold a large amount of Ethereum on their balance sheet. And with this company, when we talk just about technical analysis, we are also low at the 45 level on the relative strength index. And then it does appear that we could be seeing a bullish cross on the MACD, which I do expect because this company again has such a large holding in Ethereum, and all the crypto miners and all the crypto reserve companies have recently been in a bit of a bear market despite the markets being a lot more bullish. A lot of these crypto derivative plays just really haven't ran up as much as many other plays in comparison. So with BMNR, we are still in this level of sideways consolidation, but I do expect a big break out of this level as soon as we see crypto really wake up, which could be happening any day now with the recent news from the Federal Reserve all of November to digest that data and then going in to December. So I am very excited for BitMine Immersion. I am also very excited for MSTR Strategy. This is Michael Saylor's company. The exact same playbook as BMNR, which is to have a reserve instead of doing Ethereum. MSTR does that reserve with Bitcoin. So if you are an Ethereum bull, I recommend BMNR, and if you are a Bitcoin bull, I recommend MSTR. And I am bullish on both and the entire crypto space again for Q4 of this year. So I am invested into both of these plays, especially while we are at such lows, because with MSTR, we recently did fall under that 200-day moving average, which when we look at the history of MSTR, every single time we were at the 200-day moving average, we did see a bounce off of that level. So we are under that level while also being low on the relative strength index, and then appearing that we could be seeing a bullish cross on the MACD. So I could see a big explosion with MSTR coming any day now, and we also have a bullish catalyst for MSTR tomorrow as we do have their earnings report. This is going to come right after the bell. So right as the market closes, MSTR is going to be announcing their earnings, and with their last earnings report, it was their best ever when it came to earnings per share, and this is because they were able to put the unrealized gains of Bitcoin on their balance sheet. And so I do expect to have another positive earnings from MSTR tomorrow, despite Bitcoin being a bit flat and sideways with the last months. I still do expect another positive earnings report, and I do believe that this trend that we are seeing with their earnings going up from those unrealized gains of Bitcoin is going to continue. And with MSTR, some do look at this company and they aren't bullish on it. So there are a lot of bears on MSTR because they talk about the past with MSTR, about how they were a technology company that was failing. They still do have that technology side to their company, so there is still the real strategy, the underlying company of strategy, but more than anything, they really are a Bitcoin reserve. And there's MSTR, there is Strike, there is Strive, there is all these derivatives that Michael Saylor has to pay dividends out to investors also, and it all is on this Bitcoin balance sheet that they have. So there's a lot of interesting dynamics with this company, and there's a lot of investors. I watch a lot of videos online about MSTR and the MNAV and how undervalued it is. So there is some bears, but a lot of bulls that are expecting for MSTR to also have a big pop to finish the year. So I'm very bullish on both of these crypto plays, and the next play that we're going to get into helps to power our computers so we could take a look at our cryptocurrencies. That is AMD, one of the biggest chip providers in the world, currently sitting at a price of $262. And what I see currently I'm seeing in AMD right now, it does look like we just completed an ascending triangle. So as we can see right here, we have this a triangle here, and now we have had these green candlesticks coming out of this triangle. So on terms of technical analysis, some investors will see this and they will say that AMD is overvalued and that we are ready for a pullback. We did have that big gap up when they did announce their deal with OpenAI, and now we are seeing more bullish momentum. So for those who are bearish, they are looking at that, the relative strength index being high and the MACD also being high, saying that this is a reason why AMD needs to drop. But I believe that AMD is set to go a lot higher. Eventually, yes, being high on the relative strength index and the MACD will result in some type of pullback, but right now we have the perfect mix of catalysts going on for AMD. When we talk about the macros, we did just get confirmation of the rate cut today, and then we have AMD's earnings coming next week, so the first week of November. So let's look. November 4th is when AMD is going to be announcing their earnings, and they are expected to have their largest quarterly ever in terms of revenue. And recently, this gets me more bullish on AMD than anything else, and that is that AMD and the US government agreed to a $1 billion supercomputer and AI deal. So in this, the US government has made a major deal with AMD. The U.S. Department of Energy and AMD have reportedly agreed to a $1 billion deal, and we will see AMD build 2 advanced supercomputers for the federal department over the next few years. So AMD got this deal, and also NVIDIA apparently got a deal with this, getting 7 supercomputers. And so this is exactly what we have been talking about with AMD. There is only so much demand that NVIDIA could supply. And so with AMD being number 2 there is a lot of demand for these chips and this technology, and both NVIDIA and AMD can participate in this together, winning together. Basically, like if we're talking about like a sports team, like a basketball team, these two working together with the federal government, it's a positive to have 2 superstars on your team. So I've seen some investors not like AMD, saying that because they are number 2 to NVIDIA, you might as well just stay with NVIDIA. But I would argue that AMD has a lot more potential to the upside, because NVIDIA still has a lot of potential to the upside. NVIDIA should run a lot higher. Right now, NVIDIA at a $200 price point, and there was a lot of bullish catalysts with NVIDIA recently. So NVIDIA still has a long way to run, but they are right at about a $5 trillion market cap. When we look at AMD, their market cap is still a lot less at $429 billion, and it could go a lot higher. And if you understand market cap, you know that the lower the market cap is and the less money it takes to push the stock higher. And so 430 billion, still a large market cap, but I have a feeling that it is going to go a lot higher. And myself, I love to invest in companies that are working with the government, because when you are working with the government, you basically cannot fail, and the government has unlimited funding. So the government doing a $1 billion deal with AMD, I believe that this is only the beginning for the deals that we are going to see with AMD, and the whole markets right now are focused on these chip makers of NVIDIA and AMD. And so AMD, I am very excited about. Again, when we talk about technical analysis, it does appear that we just saw this ascending triangle complete, and now we are seeing that bullish push out of AMD. And with their earnings next week, I do expect a positive earnings. And so right now, AMD looking super bullish. The macros are looking bullish, and then also the underlying company is looking very bullish. So AMD, I'm very excited about, just like this next sector, which is also around these supercomputers and all this crazy technology. Quantum, one of my favorite plays throughout the entire year, and this is my favorite quantum play right here. QBTS, D-Wave Quantum, having a positive day, going up by 6%. And recently with quantum, the entire sector did see a drawdown. So we did see a big retraction in quantum. This did have some investors very fearful, but we have to remember this is a very volatile sector, and big drawdowns in quantum happen from time to time. We did see the big drawdown in the early part of the year where we saw quantum go down by about 50%, and then we recently did see that big drawdown once again. But with D-Wave, as I have said all year long, we have been in these levels of a rising support and resistance, and things have been decently predictable. So just like a cake, we have some layers here, and we could see that we have jumped through so many layers. We recently got up to 45, was rejected at that point. Not just QBTS, but the entire quantum market having a sell-off. But what is positive with QBTS, we did have that major sell-off, but we have bounced off this previous level of resistance. So we did see those euphoric movements from quantum. We did see that sell down, but we are right back to what was previously resistance and is now acting as support. When we look at the relative strength index, we are at 53, and then when we look at the MACD, we don't have any clear indication exactly where we are going next. So because of this, I do believe that quantum may go a bit sideways for the short term, but with risk assets and with quantitative easing, this is most favorable for risk assets, and all year long, quantum has been a tremendous risk asset. And I am now seeing more and more and more investors talk about quantum, and just more talk of quantum every single day. There's so much true intrinsic value with quantum. We have been covering it this entire year, but I feel that the masses are just starting to catch on to quantum. So I do expect for QBTS to go a lot higher, and this is one of my solid long-term plays. And now to get into our last stock of the day, Robinhood stock, which has also been on a very predictable pattern. So with Robinhood stock, we have been in this rising level of support and resistance ever since we did see the sell-off that finished around Liberation Day. So we have bounced all the way from levels at $35 and now sitting at $143, and at one point recently we were at $150. But again, the macros in the short term were looking fearful. We did have some worries with China and the US. The entire markets did have a bit of a sell-off. Robinhood fell down to 120, but did see a bounce off that rising level of support, and now we have returned right to the middle in this trend. When we do look at the relative strength index, we did have a bounce off of 50, and then when we look at the MACD, it does appear that we may be seeing a bullish cross in Robinhood. So Robinhood, also a company that is going to be having their earnings this next week. So a day after AMD's earnings, Robinhood is going to be announcing on the 5th, and they are expected to have their largest quarterly ever at $1.21 billion. I do expect for them to either meet this quarterly or exceed this quarterly. And what I love with Robinhood is they are constantly improving and bringing innovation. So we have seen so much improvements and innovations with Robinhood this last year, really innovating finance. They are going to be bringing out these digital tokens to the European Union. They are becoming a true fintech brand this fall, and also Robinhood has the crypto markets. They have the betting markets. We're going to see Robinhood Social next year. And so Robinhood, one of these companies that constantly pleases provides investors with better expectations, improved guidance, and they just show consistent results. I have a price target at Robinhood right now of $175. That's my long-term price target on Robinhood to finish the year. But with this quarterly coming up next week, I could see this quarterly, as long as it comes in as positive, Robinhood going back to 150 and potentially higher. So a lot of growth still to come in Robinhood. I know the year has been crazy with Robinhood. So if you look at the chart, some investors may feel fearful because we have jumped all the way from levels of 35 to now 140. That is quite the multiplication. But what I will say with Robinhood is this company, again, proven fundamentals, a strong company, a real growth company. So if there were just one company I were to put all my money into and just let it sit, wait, and not watch for the next 5 to 10 years, it would definitely be Robinhood, because so much growth is coming for this company. But overall, there is so much growth coming into the markets, and I was very excited to see Jerome Powell confirm exactly what investors were hoping for today, which is the rate cut. Again, he wasn't exactly clear about what we will see in December, but we have to remember that the Federal Reserve is always under the microscope, and so of course he's not going to be too dovish while the government is in a shutdown and he is not getting the most data, because he doesn't want to come out too dovish, get some data that's horrible, and then have to change his projection. But we have a long time until December, and so I do expect for the markets to continue to push bullish into December, and I do expect for the main talk to be all around December's rate cut. I do expect the 70% projection to get better also, because we are going into a larger cycle of quantitative easing and money printing. I don't see any reason why the Federal Reserve would cut in September and October and then just all of the sudden pause in December and just stop being stimulative. So I would love to hear what everyone else thinks in the comments section below. Please let me know what you thought of today's trading session, if you are excited for the rest of the year, or if for any reason you are bearish. So please let me know. Also, please leave a like and please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. I thank you all so much, as always, for being here for the daily talk of stock, and I will see you in the next one.